Good morning, everyone. It's right after Easter, and I hope each and every one of you had a wonderful Easter weekend in whatever shape and form that looked like. I know for us here on the West Coast, it was a bit of a different Easter as we celebrated with our family virtually, and our dinner took place at 3 p.m. On Sunday, but it was still great to connect with family members and share in some good memories and see some familiar faces on a very traditional holiday for many people. I also find, right now these beautiful blooms of spring, and it can't help but bring a smile on my face and a sense of renewal. And usually at our house, it usually means a lot of window washing. So it's a perfect weather for that. Today is also the launch of Family Caregivers of BC's podcast, Caregivers Out Loud. And I can't tell you how excited we are to launch this, and the team's been working really hard behind the scenes. So it's fabulous. We hope that you'll check it out on the website and have a listen to it. So welcome again to our Facebook live edition this week. Tomorrow we have Kate, who's going to be doing meditation with us again, which was a lovely way to start our day last week. Just a reminder that if you're an active user on Facebook, we'll be happily checking the inbox and messenger for any of your questions or comments or ideas or feedback. We'll happily make sure that gets monitored. And the other piece is just that because Facebook Live is a public platform, we're just not able to ensure confidentiality and privacy. So in terms of the comments that you make or what we also share, they may or may not fully align with your own experiences and your own thoughts. And just remember that as we go through the session today. So I was reflecting that it's been a month since we've been physically distancing ourselves from others, and it's kind of remarkable to think about, that it hasn't been a month. And then over the weekend, we actually were listening to a podcast where Esther Perel was one of the guests, and her big focus is, of course, around relationships and quite a few undertones of self-compassion with the people that we're caring for, with ourselves, whether those people are living in our homes, whether they're at a distance, or even if we're living on our own, and yet we're still caring for someone. And so I thought it would be a really great idea on today's Facebook Live session, of course, with the Caregivers Out Loud, which is all about caregivers having a voice and touching on topics of self-care, compassion, relationships. That today we'd build on this idea of relationships during a pandemic, and what they look like, and how we can try and continue to nurture them as much as possible. So before I launch in, the other thing I do want to say is that we do have 3 meetings going on here in our home. So I apologize in advance if there's any mishaps or if there's a crazy dog that runs through the screen. So I think it's safe to say that most of us are spending the most time we ever have with the people in our direct household. For some of us, that might be the person we're caring for, or it might actually just be ourselves, or maybe we're caring for someone that we can't actually see at the moment, or they're long distance. I was joking with a friend over the weekend that we, who have single children, that we're saying there's nothing like a pandemic than making your teenager your best friend. But with all that comes these adjustments that we have to make with our relationships. So one of the points that was brought forward in this podcast that I was listening to was this idea of checking in with ourselves regularly, which I thought was a really interesting point. While we might be establishing these new normals and these new schedules, this idea of increasing self-awareness with how we're feeling. And last week we talked about self-awareness and how it's key to our self-care. So one of the points that was brought up in the podcast was this idea of checking in how you're feeling first thing in the morning. So are you feeling energetic? Are you feeling tired? Do you feel like you've got a lot on your plate? Are you worried about something? And even just having that awareness of how you're feeling is really helpful around perhaps how you're going to shape your day or what you might tackle during the day. And then be able to check in, once or twice more to see how that changes. And then based on how you're feeling, this idea of how trying to adjust our expectations according to how we're feeling, or at the very least, as we said, just by starting this process. Because we know it can really affect our ability to care, how productive we feel, our ability to be present in the moment. And if you're able to, if it is helpful, being able to share how you're feeling with that person that you're in that living space with. That could also be your partner, could also be your children. It could be the person you're caring for if there's that opportunity. And the other piece that Esther was speaking to was trying to quantify it a bit so that because most of us can work towards this idea of understanding your range. So maybe you're feeling like you're at an 8 this morning, or maybe you feel like you're at a 4. And if you're sharing workload or sharing space, being able to share how you're feeling can often help with other people's understanding of where you're at in that particular moment of the day. So I thought those were some really good tips. The other thing that we talked about was this idea, and this built on last week, of giving yourself a break. So we talked about self-compassion and building on this idea of being kind to ourselves. And one of the things that they talked about was this idea of what's reasonable for us to do in a day, and how can we, because it's not always possible, but how can we adjust how we might go about caring? So Esther Perel talks about how we're sharing space all the time, and we typically have more screen time, both of which can be draining for our energy levels. So she was stressing the importance of taking a break. And for some, that could be taking a break from a screen. It could be taking a break from our caregiving duties, if that's possible, and even if it's just for a few moments. And it's going to look very different for everybody. So for some people, it's going to be trying to get outside and be physically active, whether it's walking or sitting outside in the sun and doing some meditation, sitting outside and reading, spending some time with the person that we're sharing our household with through some shared physical activity. It could be reading a book, could be looking outside the window, and just simply enjoying a moment where there isn't screen time or conversation or feeling like we have to think, or listening to music around giving ourselves, again, that break from that screen time, break from those relationships in our household as well. The other thing that I was thinking about in terms of this whole idea about giving ourselves a break and being kind to ourselves is there's this idea that we can think about our must-dos. There are certain must-dos that we have to do every day. And we can maybe try and think about them using the acronym END, which is E, which is energizing, N is neutral, and D is draining. And sometimes being able to know which activities are more draining or more neutral or give us energy can help us as we shape our day and as we go through how we might want to take on some of those tasks. As we're a month into it, I'm not sure if you're feeling this way too, but I feel like we have finally found our new routine. It feels like it's taken quite a while to establish it. But it's also a key factor in providing some structure in the light of uncertainty, and that came out in this podcast as well. And again, that routine's going to look very different for each of us, and each of us is going to decide what's most important to us and the person we're caring for, and what other activities are less important. And we may choose to let some of those other activities go for now to help really decrease the expectation and but still provide that sense of normalcy and that routine. One of the things that we were speaking about in our staff meeting last week was this idea that sometimes people are now in a position where they're having to care and they're doing things that they wouldn't otherwise be doing. So that's sort of things like personal care and other activities. So this idea, there's a website called Checking Out the Home Alone Alliance, and a bunch of how-to videos and resources for family caregivers on a specific task. We'll put the link in the comments below. It might happen a little bit after this Facebook Leave, but we'll make sure they're in there. And it's a great reference point. The other piece that we were connected on about relationships, and this builds on last week's idea of shared networks. And last week we talked about the circle of supports, which is really equally important. And so we just want to stress that again. How that looks, again, is going to be very different for everyone who's caring for someone. But this idea of shared networks, what it does is it gives us a place to connect with people that either know us, whether it's an old friend or old friends or our current friends or other caregivers, that it gives us a space where we can connect on how we're feeling. And for, again, some of us it might be related to caregiving, and we want to have a virtual caregiver support group or a telephone support group. For others, it might actually be finding a way to connect with their book club online, or using video chats if possible, or texting to have those shared experiences. So again, coming back to this idea of not leaving our circle of supports to chance, to working on nurturing them and managing them, to help support us through what's going to be a little more of an uncertain time in the next, conceivable future. So this, I think the last point around circle supports that we talked about last week is that it's really important to maximize that positivity, and also a place to be able to speak freely about how you're feeling. That circle of support is going to help make you feel more connected and feeling less isolated. So finally, I just want to wrap up with, again, where you can find support and resources. Our support line is open, and it's all the information is on our Facebook site and also on our website on how to reach us. We're available Monday to Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. We can support you based on your unique needs. We can help bring awareness into your situation. We can listen to you. We can suggest ideas and resources. We can also refer you into more one-to-one support through our coaching service. Also, just a reminder to turn into our podcast today. Again, we're super excited. You could find it on our website, and we'll be linking it again into our social media. You've probably seen some of the posts if you're following us on social media. We also have some great, terrific resources and tools online to support your strategies in building resiliency, in supporting your circle of supports, and we'll make sure that we'll list those in the feed below as well. So I hope, again, that what you'll do is you'll join me in asking yourself, what's the one thing, big or small, that you'll think about doing today or for the rest of the week to continue to support you as a person and as a caregiver. So thank you for joining us, and we will see you soon, and have a wonderful sunny day. Bye for now.